Hello. No? Yeah, okay, good. It's working. Welcome to History Chats this afternoon. Um, Thought I would have gotten this fine-tuned. Just made sure it works. Great. Hey, welcome to History Chats this week. We're talking about Festival of the Arts. I started a little earlier than I expected to, so I'm not gonna jump. Yeah, let's just jump right in. It's a couple seconds early. By the time the delay gets there, it'll be 12:30. Festival of the Arts. This weekend is the start of the annual Festival of the Arts Festival of the Arts Festival? Festival of the Arts in Wausau, which is a long-standing tradition. So probably don't need this. All right. And yeah, this is, by the way, the logo for the organization. Shoot. Hold on. Give me just a second here. I forgot that I cropped this. Nope. There we go. Let me uncrop it for you. There we go. Hey, now we're on time. Festival of the Arts. So this is the logo that we have now. They've been using this since 2014, 15, somewhere in there. Although there have been quite a few other logos over the years. And yeah, I think there's an interesting history here. Oh, did I click out? There we go. So there's been a few over the years. I want to start though with the very beginning. You know, here's the history of the Festival of the Arts. Why don't we start at the very beginning? It starts in 1965, and this is the poster for the festival in 1965. Well, kind of. I'm missing it. You know, I'm leaving something out here, which is this. So, interestingly enough, the very first Festival of the Arts back in 1965 was a production of the Marathon County Historical Society, us. I should clarify, this isn't really so much a logo so much as it is just a graphic that was created for it. They won't necessarily settle into a logo until later, but a lot of the early years, yeah, kind of look like this. Anyway, Marathon County, right? We were part the host for the thing. I'm not going to say necessarily that the Marathon County Historical Society started Festival of the Arts, although it kind of did here. It's probably better said that Ed Schoenberger started it, who happened to be the executive director at the time of the Historical Society. This is a fun picture of Ed. Maybe not the best representative. You can't quite see him, but I think you get the idea of his character here. Ed was a really interesting guy, and we've talked about Ed before in his tenure here. He comes to Wausau around 1957 or so. Initially to help with the new museum that was being created and creating some dioramas and murals and stuff like that. We didn't have a whole lot to go with at that point in time. Ends up sticking around, likes Wausau, so gets involved, becomes the assistant director here until 1965. In 1964, John Stautenberg takes a job elsewhere, and so Ed takes over as the head of the organization. And up to this point, you know, I would say that Ed is an interesting choice in some ways because he's not a historian necessarily. I think he becomes kind of very much a historian in his tenure here, but that wasn't necessarily what he went to school with or his work experience up to this point. But at the time, you know, we needed somebody who could connect with people. His skills were very much as an artist. I think he was probably first and foremost an artist, and then an educator, and then, you know, history and some of the other things that he did, very much part of that. But, you know, he was an artist at heart, I think. And so his ability to tell stories visually was really important in those early years. And then he continued to find ways to interact with the public in interesting ways, right? The building, which at this point, the Yawkey House was the museum. We didn't have the Woodson History Center across the street yet. And this was the working museum. And it was difficult to try to get people to be involved. You know, this in a sense of doing pure history. So Ed and during this tenure, certainly, you know, they would have, hey, let's throw together an exhibit of, you know, somebody local's watercolors in one of the rooms. Here's a little exhibition. Here's some sculpture. They would throw that stuff in there. In part also because there's not a lot of other venues for this period. I think in 1964 there was, um, forgetting his first name, C. Veen, who came down and started, for about a couple years had a little art gallery. But the CVA hadn't been created yet. Certainly the Leoch Woodson hadn't been created yet. The you know Museum of Modern Art, Contemporary Art, hasn't been created. So there's not a lot of places, and Ed finds opportunities to throw that in there. And in 1965, after becoming in charge, he has an idea to expand on that a little bit, and he reaches out in close conjunction with the Wisconsin Valley Art Association and members there, and they put on. You start reaching out to their contacts to say, hey, let's put on a little festival of arts. So he goes out and asks, would you be willing to show here if we had a little thing? He gets 42 people to say yes. And so we have the first Festival of the Arts held right on the grounds inside the house of the Yawkey Museum. So there they out on front. There's a couple pictures. Snow fencing they threw up so that they could hang the art on. This is a nice, easy way to do that. So you can see all of that. Yeah, they did pretty well. I mean, it was pretty popular, so you can see all of these things, and it was well attended. One of the things that's interesting is that this wasn't just a festival for visual art. It was also a festival for arts in general. So it wasn't just, hey, come see some people's oil paintings or watercolors. It was also there's a bunch of stuff. In fact, here is the schedule of events, which was described as being spiced with variety. So let's look at some of the other things that are happening here. So we have poetry reading up on the third floor in the attic theater, which is what they're calling the ballroom up on the Yawkey House. Um, yeah, members of the Regional Writers of Wisconsin, very much closely associated with the arts in a big way at this point in time. So again, poetry reading, less of that these days, but there was some poetry reading, and that was a staple for many of the years in the 60s and 70s for sure. It happened to coincide, it just kind of worked out that we also had an exhibit here at the time, traveling exhibit, which was a special exhibit um, of photos from NASA. And I don't know if this is one of the things on there. This was taken in 1964 by one of the Apollo missions, but yeah, some exhibition of again some contemporary relevant things in the 1960s. Right, space is very much on the minds of people at the time. Here you go. Sponsored by the Wausau Camera Club, another group that was chipping in and helping here too. So this is another interesting thing with the times. Back in the 60s and 70s, events at the Historical Society would often include a screening of historical films. Granted, these were talkies, or silent movies that were like 15 minutes long. So it's a little easier to just step in and watch. But they did have some. And I don't know, it looks like they showed 3 movies each day. I know 2 of the 3 were from 1914 and featured the comedy duo, or acting duo, I guess, of Charlie Chaplin on the left, sans the mustache that in the hat and all of that. And then on the right you have Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle. The 2 of them actually put out 2. These were the posters for The Knockout and The Rounders, which were 2 of the movies that they showed. Again, interesting to think about, like, hey, let's just show some early films from like 60 years ago. But yeah, that's what they did. There was visual elements too. It wasn't just here's some film, here's some visual arts, here's some poetry. They also had some performing arts, right? So we have Mimi here, Mimi Platter, who did a ballet performance in the Sunken Garden, and then the second day she did some, I think, ballet and folk dancing, I think is what they described it as. I'm not sure which is here. Is there her? There's also some baton twirling drill team. This year led by Judy Wendorf, who did some stuff there. This is on the street, McIndoe Street, in front of the museum. And then there was also some Tonkawa dancers, or Indian dancing as they called it. There's actually some better slides here, so just put those up. Um, yeah, maybe not the best in terms of looking back, not something we would replicate. It's a nice step in the right direction to include Native Americans. These are, of course, not Native Americans. These are from the Boy Scout troop, number 419. I think G.D. Jones is what they were operating out of. But hey, it's the 1960s, and even though this is a style of dancing representative of, I think, a tribal group down in like Texas, if I remember correctly, it still was sort of an attempt to try to do something interesting, and certainly was visually interesting for the times. Although I guess again today I don't know that necessarily you'd want to just have a bunch of white elementary school Boy Scouts do some dancing that represent Native Americans in this way. But still, kind of interesting to see. Again, 1960s. This is kind of the stuff that we were doing. And then of course you have some music. And I don't have any pictures of 1965 in the performances. There was a couple of them. I'll just throw this one up. This is from 1969, but this is Sid Kyler, I think Louis Pratt and Bud Rosell, maybe. Um, they had a little jazz group there. So the Wausau Jazz Club played a few times. There's also some music by KRN Grill's String Quartet, a sing-along by Sterling and Lorraine Anderson with Dr. Warren Rudy. And then they also had a performance on the portico on Sunday by Hoot Roberts and his Hooter Villains, which I think was a sort of country folk group. And then I didn't have a slide for this, but you can see on the bottom down here, the hot dogs, donuts, soft drinks and food was provided by the Girl Scouts. They say, "We'll perform for you and amaze you by their ability to satisfy." That's out of the kitchen. And then, of course, at the very bottom, now, whenever you're reading this, is a great time to join the Historical Society. So, still applies today yeah, anyway, I won't give you the pitch. So that was the first day in 1965, or it's 2 days, the first weekend of the Arts Festival. It went really well. The artists, again, there's 42 of them. They bought. Apparently, there's about $600 in art sales, and so they went away. Not dissatisfied. Adjusted for inflation, that's like $3,800 today, which over 42 artists. I can't imagine they made a lot of money, but still, it wasn't necessarily about selling art. It's about sort of the recognition. It's about the atmosphere, and all of that. But like I said, this is not going to be the first, right? 1965, 66, we do it again, and it becomes a regular feature. Now, I'll note these are some of the posters and graphics materials. The Yawkey House, or the Yawkey Historical Museum, remains an important part of the venues and the organizers at this point in time. Ed is definitely still very much the center for the next, or involved, right? However, as time goes on, by 1966, the organizing group that's responsible is less the Historical Society and more the Wisconsin Valley Art Association. I think by this point, originally it was formed in 1951 as the Wisconsin River Valley Art Association. I think they dropped the river at this point. I don't know why I felt like I needed to qualify that. It's a one-word drop. You gotta know what I mean. Anyway, they take over this and they really see a lot of potential. They start to grow. It's not just a couple people kind of chipping in and throwing some stuff out there. They start to create committees, and they're going to try to grow this. Now, it still remains throughout the 1960s and into the 1970s sort of centered on the Historical Society. But as we'll see, it spills out from the Historical Society into Yawkey Park. Actually, let me bring up, here we go. Here is, where am I? Oh, there we go. So this is Google Earth. You can see, so this is the Yawkey House Museum. We're looking south. This is the YMCA. This is from 2016. Yeah. So the new YMCA expansion hasn't been built, but Yawkey Park here. Originally back in the 60s, it would have been a little bit longer. I don't know if it went all the way to McIndoe Street, but along this block. And so this becomes the center for a lot of the activities as well, as you can see here. And then this is on the street, First Presbyterian, City Hall. Um, yeah. I'll also note, I can't remember this guy's name. I was going to look him up. I didn't get around to it. In 19, I think this is 69. This is a guest artist they brought in the white shirt here. Um, I'm pretty sure. I might be wrong about that. I'm guessing based off of my vague memory of recognizing his face, but could have been another guy with sort of that beard and white. But they did bring in artists, right? So it's not just showing local artists and saying, show your stuff. They brought in guests to do demonstrations. They also started to the Wausau, Wisconsin Valley Art Association starts to institute this, the juried sort of aspect of this, of they do sort of a little judging, and then they award sort of recognition to some of the best artists at the show, at the festival. So that happens as well. And then also it continues to grow. It's not just a bunch of Girl Scouts, or I shouldn't say a bunch of, I don't want to be demeaning. I'm sure it was very good in 1965, but we start to see more organized, involvement from other groups like the Kiwanis here, doing, I'm not sure, elephant ears maybe? I guess that's what I assume, but maybe other, um, food that you can get to. That's going to be a running theme too. A lot of organizations, as the Festival of the Arts grows, are going to get involved in doing other things too. So in 1970, 71, 72, they decide to move. So the Arts Festival is growing. It's no longer going to be centered on the Historical Society, which is great, but it doesn't have the best parking. It's not the best space. And so, Gary talked a couple weeks ago about the new, at this point, relatively new buildings and campus of the UW Extension. And so they end up moving over there. And so from, I think, 1972, for about 10-ish years, they're going to be here. So this is looking out there. So here's, again, a little bit more space to grow, a little bit better environment than, blocking off streets and things like that. Marathon Park is right there as well. I will also note, even though we're moving slightly past it, still some snow fencing. Again, you don't see that too much these days. We have better, I would assume most people are going to have better ways to display the art, but there's still some stuff hanging on snow fences. Although actually increasingly we're starting to see things change, which leads to the creation of this logo. I think, again, I want to say 74 is when they started using this. But these are, in addition to the text, Festival of the Arts, you have those sort of designs, which if you look closely are actually geometric patterns showing like little booths that they would use to show art. At least that's the idea. So throughout the 1970s, we see some other things too. So in 1976, you see the opening of the Leoki Woodson Art Museum and the very first inaugural birds and art, or bird art, I think is what they originally called it. Or they're calling it at this point. But, new kind of concept. That's going to kick off by 1977. We're going to make that a regular feature. Again, Gary talked about this last week with birds and art and the art museum itself. Also in 1977, we have the creation of a new kind of spin-off and associated group, which is Art in the Park. Now, they're not using the term Outrageous Weekend at this point, but that starts to, I think in the 1980s, they start to adopt that. But we're seeing this close collaboration between these art groups, which are all going, this is a great weekend to celebrate art in Wausau. So we have Art in the Park, which is maybe a little less concerned about the curated side and maybe more, here's some vending opportunities to sell art, and maybe a little, more affordable for some people. And then you have the birds and art out at the Leoki Woodson Art Museum. And then, the Festival of the Arts continues. And I'm not sure, at some point during the 70s and 80s, I think the Festival of Arts spuns off onto its own. It's not, as I understand it, I could be wrong about this, but I believe it's no longer part of the Wisconsin Valley Art Association proper, though it was. Brings us to the 1980s. The continued success of the Festival of the Arts is great, but in 1984, I think it's 1984, we're going to see a shift. And there's kind of two reasons for this. One, well, I think it's a growth thing, but I think it's also to celebrate the fact that we have a brand new downtown that we're excited to show off. I don't think this is 1984. This is a little bit later, maybe 88, 89. But of course, we have the mall. And along with the mall, we renovated part of Third Street to make a pedestrian mall. And so, hey, let's bring it downtown again. And so in mid to late 1980s, we see Festival of the Arts move away from the extension on the west side and back to the downtown Wausau area. Yeah, also new logo in the 1980s. Yeah. I'm just going to put up a bunch of pictures of, this is from 1989. In 1989, this is 25 years, I think. And so they took some good pictures of all of the award winners, the Award of Merits that were given out. So I'm just going to play some of them. Again, this is the same system that has largely been in place. I'm sure there are nuances to how this has developed over the years and stuff behind the scenes, but in a lot of ways, by 1989, we're kind of in the same sort of vein. Like they're not going to completely redesign and or not redesign. They're going to redesign the logos, but they're not going to completely conceptualize what the art festival is going to be, which is good because you don't need to. It works, right? And we still have people who are putting a lot of time. Obviously it's growing. Love to see the inclusion of Hmong community, which of course the course of the 1980s continued to be an increasingly larger part of the community here as well. So they're getting in on this too, and that recognition is great. There's still, throughout all of this, it is. I think the focus is more on the art or specific type, like the visual art, but there's still a lot of performing art, particularly music, right? I think there's a little less like dancing, like ballet dancing and, baton twirling. That's maybe a time period thing. But still, here again is Sid Kyler Group. I think that's Bud Rozelle and Louis Pratt on the Barry, yeah. And over the years, of course, other things too. There's still some spectacle involved. This is again in 1989. They had a juggler come and do some performances. So it isn't. It is still sort of an arts in the general sense as well. Yeah. Also, just note, kind of cool other stuff that happens. Again, continuing involvement of other groups like Wisconsin Public Radio. Again, 1988 in this case. There is Michael Feldman and his great program. What do you know? What do you know? Yeah. Yeah. Also, if you're wondering about, is that a cow with sunglasses in the background? Yes, it is. Yeah, I'm sure there's a story behind this. I could swear I've seen a better picture of this specifically as part of the branding, I guess, but I couldn't find it in our records. I'll probably find it this afternoon or tomorrow. That's the way things go. But yeah, they did have this gigantic cow with a big pair of sunglasses. And that was, just sitting there in the middle of the venue. So fun. I don't really have much more to say about that except, hey, that's fun. Let's go. Of course, as time goes on, I think this is from 2008, 2009. There are changes that do happen, notably with the redeveloping of the 400 block into the park sort of environment that we have today. There's sort of a nice location to kind of move into, so you can see that. Yeah, it's again, I think certainly by the last 15 years, things are pretty much, there's not too much more to report about big changes and little things here and there. Logos, for example, early 2000s. I think maybe 2000. Ooh, I should have double checked this. This is a logo that they used, and then they went back, of course, to what we have today. But again, around Third Street, Yankee Bookstore up to the mall, or the equivalent of where the mall was at this point. But still a big deal, still an important event in the community, both the festival and the other art events that are happening this coming weekend. So. Hey, like I said, this coming weekend, if you're watching this when it goes up, or within close proximity, hey, hopefully the weather will be good. Go out and see some art and support the local organizations that are taking part. Um, if you're watching this after the fact, it'll come up next September, right? This is a regular thing. It doesn't seem like it's going to go anywhere, and it's a pretty cool tradition. And again, you know, started fun fact started on the grounds of the historical museum. Something that Ed Schoenberger, just kind of said, "Hey, this would be cool." Got a bunch of other people involved. I don't know if he was the genesis of the guy who first came up with the idea. It seems like that is the case, but it's certainly the important sort of founder of it. And it's go on and grown to become an amazing thing unto itself. But yeah, some interesting history there, and yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I was going to put in. That's the end of my program. I'm just going to take a quick look and see if anybody. Is there comments or anything like that? Questions? I did notice. Oh, that's right. I didn't putting them in there. Oh, there's a bunch of comments. Oh, I guess I got something wrong here. I'm not sure what that was about here, but Ken Schoenberger said something that I was wrong at some point. Apologize for that. Hopefully, I'm not sure what that was. But you would, Kim would certainly know if it had to do with Ed and his legacy. So I'll defer to her on that. Um, yeah. Oh, I was gonna say I didn't end up putting it in here, but somebody also noted the sidewalk chalk that was part of this. Let me see if I can find where I put that. I found a lot of really cool pictures. I didn't end up making it into the program, but for example, here's some sidewalk chalk. I think this is from 1969. Um, yeah, and of course that has kind of taken on its own thing here too. Um, yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching. We have more history chats probably coming up, every Thursday here. So I think next week we're going to have. Oh, I didn't put a graphic together for this, but I have a thing. So Gary's going to talk about. We're going to go back to the idea of some neighborhood stories. And he's going to be talking. Gary's going to come back and talk about a famous quote by, or not famous, maybe iconic statement by Louis Marchetti talking about the neighborhood of north of the creek, which is sort of the immediate north side of Wausau's, or northeast side of Wausau, kind of over the creek there. And yeah, you tune in for that. I'll have probably more information next week about what we're specifically doing. Hopefully better graphic than just some text, but there's some stuff coming up there. Cool. Well, I think maybe I'll call it there. Thanks for watching. And again, hey, Festival of the Arts is this weekend, so go take a look and maybe see you out there. Meantime, have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you next time for some more history.